The conference room in the Alberta Legislature building was thick with tension, as Premier Danielle Smith placed her pen to paper, signing what would become one of the most controversial energy deals in recent Canadian history. Outside, the late summer heat shimmered off the pavement of Edmonton's downtown core. But inside, the atmosphere was electric, with the anticipation of political warfare about to unfold. The deal itself seemed straightforward on paper. Alberta had signed an agreement with Enbridge aimed at boosting exports of heavy crude to the USA, leveraging the province's position as home to the world's fourth-largest proven crude oil reserves. But beneath this seemingly routine commercial arrangement lay a carefully orchestrated challenge to federal authority that would reignite one of Canada's most persistent political fault lines: the eternal struggle between Alberta's resource ambitions and Ottawa's environmental regulations. Smith's eyes gleamed with the satisfaction of someone who had just outmaneuvered a chess opponent. As she addressed the assembled media, the Premier had been building toward this moment for months. Having previously declared that federal climate policies represent an existential threat to Alberta, her voice carried the weight of decades of Western alienation, as she explained how this new export arrangement would circumvent what she called punitive federal green regulations that threatened to strangle Alberta's economic lifeblood. The timing was no coincidence. Smith had been methodically constructing her challenge to federal climate policy, announcing her intention to challenge the federal government's proposed clean electricity regulations under the Alberta Sovereignty Act, the controversial legislation that had become her signature political weapon. The oil sands deal represented the next escalation in this ongoing confrontation, a move designed to test the limits of provincial versus federal jurisdiction in the most provocative way possible. The reaction was swift and predictable. Environmental groups erupted in fury, arguing that the deal represented a dangerous end run around carefully crafted federal emission standards designed to meet Canada's international climate commitments. They pointed to the massive scale of Alberta's oil sands operations, noting that there are more than 165 billion barrels of bitumen in the ground, and warned that unrestricted expansion could make Canada's climate targets impossible to achieve. In Ottawa, federal ministers huddled in emergency meetings, weighing their response options. The deal struck at the heart of their climate agenda, threatening to undermine years of painstaking negotiations with international partners and potentially making a mockery of Canada's commitments under the Paris Climate Agreement. The irony was not lost on observers that, while Athabasca Oil said that it aims for a 30% reduction in emissions from the extraction process by 2025, the new export arrangement could dramatically increase overall production volumes. The broader implications rippled across the country like seismic waves. In boardrooms across Toronto and Calgary, energy executives watched nervously as the confrontation escalated, knowing that prolonged federal-provincial warfare could create the kind of regulatory uncertainty that kills investment and stalls projects. Union leaders in Alberta cheered the potential for new jobs and economic activity, while their counterparts in Ontario and Quebec worried about the environmental implications for the entire nation. The deal also exposed the fundamental contradictions in Canada's approach to energy and climate policy, while Smith proclaimed her commitment to triple down on conservative principles, including energy extraction. Federal politicians found themselves caught between their international climate commitments and the economic realities of governing a resource-rich federation. The tension highlighted how Premier Smith is meeting with U.S. officials to promote Canadian oil they do not even want, as changing global energy markets and climate policies make traditional fossil fuel exports increasingly challenging to justify. As news of the deal spread across social media and dominated evening newscasts, ordinary Canadians found themselves drawn into the debate, whether they wanted to be or not. The story touched on fundamental questions about federalism, economic sovereignty, and environmental responsibility that have defined Canadian politics for generations. In coffee shops across Alberta, the deal was hailed as a long-overdue assertion of provincial rights. In university campuses from Halifax to Vancouver, students organized protests demanding federal intervention to stop what they saw as environmental vandalism. The political calculations were complex and multi-layered. For Smith, the deal represented a win-win scenario. Either Ottawa would back down and accept Alberta's assertion of resource sovereignty, or the federal government would intervene and hand her the perfect campaign issue for the next election. Smith's new negotiating team will work toward a binding agreement with Ottawa to guarantee Alberta has access to tidewater off the Pacific, Arctic and Atlantic coasts for the export of oil, gas, and critical minerals, demonstrating her commitment to long-term strategic thinking beyond this single deal. The controversy also highlighted the changing dynamics of North American energy markets, with the United States increasingly focused on energy independence and climate considerations. Global energy forecasters are not buying the optimistic projections that Alberta's political leaders have been promoting. This reality made Smith's aggressive approach both more risky and more necessary from her political perspective, as she faced pressure to deliver economic results in an increasingly challenging global environment. As the sun set over the Alberta Legislature that evening, the lights in government offices across the country burned late into the night. Lawyers pored over constitutional precedents, economists modeled the potential impacts, and political strategists gamed out the likely scenarios. The oil sands deal had done more than just arrange for the export of heavy crude. It had reopened one of the deepest and most persistent rifts in Canadian Confederation, setting the stage for a confrontation that would define federal-provincial relations for years to come. This is exactly the kind of story that West is Best covers every day. The real political battles that shape Western Canada and impact the entire nation. While mainstream media focuses on Ottawa's perspective, we bring you the Western Canadian viewpoint that often gets overlooked in national conversations. From energy policy showdowns to provincial rights battles, we are your source for understanding how decisions made in Edmonton, Calgary, and Regina ripple across the country. If you found this deep dive into Alberta's oil sands controversy informative, make sure to like this video and subscribe to West is Best. For more in-depth coverage of Canadian politics from a Western perspective, hit that notification bell so you never miss our breaking news coverage, political analysis, and exclusive interviews with the leaders who are shaping Canada's future. Because when it comes to understanding the real dynamics of Canadian politics, the West truly knows best.